Alright, I'm finally getting around to these. For those of you not in the know, the story of Avatar The Last Airbender continued on in the form of graphic novels starting in the year 2012. The reviews are mixed, but as far as I know, these are considered canonical. I've only read through them once, so this Overanalyzing series will be a little different. I imagine it'll have a lot more of my off-the-dome opinions on how the story is shaping out, but you'll definitely be getting the classic Easter eggs and inconsistencies and reference mentions too. The 5 currently released graphic novels, in order, are The Promise, The Search, The Rift, Smoke and Shadow, and Imbalance. There are also other graphic novels released, but these are the main ones that follow the end of the show. They're all released in 3 parts, so we'll be starting today off with The Promise Part 1. Just a little disclaimer here before we get going. Much like the original Overanalyzing Avatar videos, these videos will not be a substitute for taking in the media on your own. I didn't cover the original show line by line, and I'm not going to be reading this thing word by word to you. Alright, as long as everyone's aware of that, let's get going. So they recreate the opening of the show pretty faithfully here. All the intro moves are the exact same. Moving on, we have the same or very similar shots from the show, as well as Katara's iconic words. You even read it in her voice, which is some weird 5D mind-altering comic shit that I'm not really comfortable with yet. My only problem with this panel here is that Aang doesn't actually hold his staff like this in the opening. He has this weird reverse grip with his fingers facing the camera, and yeah, I'm gonna be that much of a dick about it. Welcome to my channel. Anyway, we move on to an extended part of the opening where Katara explains that Aang won and Zuko was installed as the new Fire Lord, and now we're working on sorting out the world after the 100 Years' War. I'm also a huge fan of this panel with Ozai laid out in front of Aang. Aang just looks tough as hell, like he just clocked him or something. Like Ozai was like, I have all the power in the world. Ah! Also, we learned that the Earth King has a name, which is Quay. That was never dropped in the original show. He was just the Earth King. So immediately we have Quay setting up a theme here, calling the Fire Nation colonies an old scar on the Earth Kingdom. And then he's like, oh man, shit, I didn't mean it like that. And then Zuko's like, nah, I get it, man. That's actually pretty apt. So this sets up that Zuko, in this comic, like he said to deal with what his father's done to him internally, now, as the Fire Lord, has to deal with what his father's done to the world externally. It's a pretty nice little metaphor. Not bad. Alright, so you gotta let me do some real nitpicky shit here. There aren't many direct recreation shots from the show since we're moving on, so I gotta take what I can get. Appa should be on the right side of the panel, Mai and Suki should switch places, and Momo should be somewhere at least. What's this artist got against Team Avatar animals? This moment I'm not a huge fan of. It's revealed that during the kiss Katara and Aang share to close out the show, Sokka walks out and interrupts it, which doesn't seem so bad, but if you remember how you felt the first time watching those final scenes of Avatar, I don't know, I just think it kind of cheapens the moment. One of my gripes with Book 3 of Avatar was that sometimes the show didn't know when to just let a moment be serious and not have to have a joke over top of it, and this kind of feels like that. At the same time though, it's probably the easiest way to introduce Sokka to their relationship. He gets to have a big Sokka reaction, so I get it on that level. That being said, I kind of wish Sokka had more of a reaction. He mostly just argues with Katara that she shouldn't be grossing him out. He's not really happy for them, or confused, or I think it would have been cool if he was like, yeah, finally, I was wondering when this was gonna happen, after he got over the initial shock of it, of course. He just says, don't kiss anyone in front of me. It's weird. What do you mean, man? That's Aang, your ultra homie. You should be happy for him. And Katara. Come on, man. So yeah, then there's some festivities for the fact that Aang made Ozai bend a pelagic, and everyone's pretty jazzed on that. And Toph has just got to be like, this sucks. I can't see with my feet. There's just explosions everywhere. This is the worst celebration ever. I wish Ozai won. Please don't do that, Momo. I don't like that. Then Zuko really kills the vibe here with something he's been meaning to ask Aang. He says that now he's the Fire Lord. If Aang ever sees that Zuko is becoming like Ozai, he wants Aang to kill him. Which is like, wow, Zuko, this couldn't wait until tomorrow? Maybe a little more private conversation? But more than that even, it only takes a few panels for Aang to promise to kill Zuko, which is like, really? After all that I don't want to kill Ozai stuff? You're just gonna make a promise like that after a few panels? Well, then again, I guess a personal Avatar promise doesn't really mean that much to Aang. And then we get this panel of the gang moving away from the celebration and into the darker night sky, which is pretty alright symbolism. SpongeBob narrator voice 1 year later. So it turns out that Zuko's really worried about someone trying to assassinate him, and the guards are all like, listen man, no one's trying to kill you tonight, just like last night and the night before that. Except psych, it actually turns out Zuko's right this time, and we've got a little fight with this ninja girl. She's pissed that Zuko took the throne and betrayed the Fire Nation, which I like. It wouldn't just be an easy breezy install of a new Fire Lord with a brand new mindset and agenda for the country. Generations of Fire Nation citizens had only known the war at this point and needing to win, so Zuko would seem like a usurper to them. This is the kind of question Avatar is good at tackling, the weird gray situations, and I'm glad they're keeping to it. So this girl is the daughter of the mayor of Yu Dao, the first ever Fire Nation colony. Zuko and the Earth King are planning to give that land back to the Earth Kingdom. But that brings up an interesting point. The people living there today aren't invaders, they were born and raised there. They're Fire Nation citizens, but their home is this colony that is rightfully Earth Kingdom land. So their argument is, what right does Zuko have to take the only home they've ever known? Big, interesting questions like these are the highlight of these comics. So anyway, the mayor of Yu Dao is like, listen, dickhead, your dad would have never let the Earth Kingdom bully him into pulling this no more colony stunt. And then Zuko's Zuko's like my dad, and then we get an exact word-for-word remake of the scene from the last episode of the show, which I can always appreciate. And we finally get to see how that conversation plays out. Basically, Ozai mocks him, which, come on, that makes sense. I don't think Ozai would ever just spit that info out on day one. What's interesting, though, is this line about the many pressures of being the Fire Lord that he says to Zuko. It's the same thing that Zuko says to Aang when he brings up the topic of Aang killing him. Ozai mentions that these pressures will change Zuko, so this is where the fear of becoming like his father stems from. Anyway, Zuko freaks the fuck out over that. Didn't like that little comment one bit. Oh, Appa with a new saddle? Shit, look at him. Oh, and Sokka with a new outfit too? Oh, the fit is en fuego. Look at the belt. Shit. So yeah, more uneasiness as Aang ferries colonials back to the Fire Nation. The older generations think this is pretty bunk, right? So Aang does a traditional Fire Nation dance for them, saying that their culture will be intact. But this dance doesn't seem to be either the Phoenix Flight or the Camelophat Strut. So my question to you is this, Aang. How many traditional Fire Nation dances do you know? Aang makes an air sphere here to carry a bunch of stuff, like heavy looking stuff. He can do that? That's basically windy telekinesis. What the hell? Anyway, they land back at the Fire Nation, and it turns out that Zuko is suddenly like, no, go back actually. Okay, so now I gotta explain this. So this is in universe a year after the show ended, right? In the interim time, there was a comic called Toph's Metalbending Academy, which this ties into briefly here. It's not required reading by any stretch, and I don't remember being the biggest fan of that comic. I remember it being a little too wacky, maybe? It's been a while since I read it. These three are Toph students, and it turns out all their parents live in Yu Dao. And even as Earth Kingdom citizens living in a Fire Nation colony have seemingly been doing just fine, even during the war times. Anyway, yeah, these three cartoon characters from her book get a little cameo here before Toph thankfully takes off to rejoin the gang. Here's a weird little moment. Toph doesn't see Aang immediately upon landing on Appa, even though he's here. Might be because she landed on the saddle, I guess, but then she sees Aang without anyone answering her question of where he is. So, I don't know, Toph's always been kind of uncomfortable on Appa, I guess, and how her seismic sense works on non-earthen surfaces has always been a little fuzzy. Here we see that Aang is fashioned a necklace a lot like the one we see him wearing at the end of the show, but this one has a medallion for each type of bending. We see him meditating here, seemingly focusing on the earth pendant, but then on the next page, the fire pendant is between his hands. Maybe this click here is supposed to be like he switched which pendant was between his hands. I'm not super experienced at reading comics. Maybe someone can enlighten me. Alright, so Aang summons Roku to talk, and he's like, man, I wish I didn't make that promise to Zuko. I didn't even kill Ozai, and that guy was a huge asshole. Hey, wait, hold on. That's what I was saying earlier. Yeah, why did you do that? So Roku says no, though. That was the right thing to do. He regrets not pulling the trigger on Sozin. Roku was in the exact situation Aang is afraid he might be in someday, having to kill his friend to prevent tragedy. He refused to make that decision, playing back on Roku's final advice to Aang in the show, that he had to be decisive. I like this set of panels a lot, actually. Roku says that Aang has to think about the world above himself, and Aang says he'll go to Yu Dao and talk to Zuko. Now, Roku restates that Aang must be decisive, but Aang doesn't even really respond to him. He's not even looking at Roku. He stares directly forward as he finishes his thought from the panel before. I think that's a really effective way to show that Aang isn't really listening to Roku and doesn't value his advice in this conversation. Oh shit, the boys are back in town!
I'm a girl!
Sokka actually calls Smellerby a he here too, but then Katara corrects him, and then Sokka's like, yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, good save, Sokka. You'll get in trouble for that. Is it just me, or are you not a huge fan of how Aang is drawn sometimes? Hey, remember how Sneers never got a line in the show? Well, forget that. Sneers gets to speak now. Oh, hell yeah. So Katara and Aang jump the fence here into Yu Dao, and Aang lands and says Flameo Hotman, which is like, to me, you don't need a reference to the show every 5 pages to keep me interested, guys. Also, I had always assumed Flameo would be spelled with an E, so this comic is really disappointing, honestly. No, Aang, we talked about this in Overanalyzing Avatar. You can't do the drop someone into the ground with earthbending move or it breaks the fight system. Like, why don't you, instead of dancing around all these attacks, just drop all these firebenders into the ground en masse? Why don't you always do that? It's just an instant win move. I get that earthbenders should be able to do that, but actually showing them doing it just opens up your fight system to lame, uninteresting one-move fights. Damn, this is the first time Aang's clothing has gotten burned since the Deserter. Well, I guess unless you count Azula literally blowing the shirt off his back with lightning. And I guess Ozai, well, I guess he kind of just wore Aang's robe down over the course of their fight. This is a weird tangent I'm on. I'm just saying it's surprising with all the fire being tossed around in the show. You'd think it would happen more. Stop trying to set my boyfriend on fire. Yes, I don't know if you guys have put it together, but Aang and Katara are dating now, and Katara is way into it even. Dedicate 2 pages to her saying that she's way into it. That'll show those weird online shipper people. Wait, Jean Weifu is back, and he is a firebender after all. Shortly after the retaking of Wamashu, Jean deserted the army, becoming disillusioned with Ozai's rule after the entire city left to become refugees to escape the annexation. Once Zuko took the throne, however, he was welcomed back into the army and stationed in Yu Dao as a guard to keep the peace, which means right now attacking Aang. No, wait, Katara, don't do it! Oh, thank God Zuko stopped her. But it seems like to me Katara had already committed to skewering Zhang Weifu here. Like, these icicles have speed lines on them, right? They're moving forward. I don't know how Zuko grabbing her after they're already moving would stop them. But it's not like me to nitpick. I never do that. Okay, so I think the writing on this interaction is a little heavy-handed. Katara says Zuko is hurting her, and Zuko refuses to let her go until she says she'll stop ragdolling his soldiers. To which Aang takes issue with because he's just like, just stop hurting Katara, dude. What's the matter with you? I feel like Zuko, at this point, as we know him, wouldn't act like this. I know there's been a year time jump, but we haven't really seen a change in him on panel that would lead me to thinking this is how Zuko would act. Anyway, Aang and Zuko get into a little scrap here, and this causes Aang to be like, well, I guess I'm gonna actually fucking kill you. Avatar Roku was right. Which also seems really heavy-handed and rushed. Aang's gonna kill Zuko because he grabbed Katara in the heat of the moment to stop her from hurting his guards, but he wouldn't kill Ozai, who was planning on burning down the entire Earth Kingdom? Really? That seems a little backwards. This does introduce a little wrinkle that I like a lot, actually, though. Despite Aang being able to control the Avatar state now, it turns out that he can still get overwhelmed and enter the Avatar state emotionally and not be able to control it. I think that's pretty cool. I can't believe it. I might have done something terrible without even thinking it through. Right? What the hell, man? Remember those really mature and thought-out talks you guys had on a regular basis as the show closed out? What happened to those? Flashback time. Remember when Zuko blew a gasket at the guy for calling him a coward and that his father would never let this happen? Turns out that guy's wife is an earthbender despite him having Fire Nation heritage. And Zuko's like, oh shit, I never thought about it like that. So this is the crux of why Zuko has 180'd on the plan to decolonize Yu Dao. He doesn't want to tear the lives apart of people that are living there now, peacefully and happily, in families that are both Fire Nation and Earth Kingdom and have had nothing to do with the war. He doesn't see that as right, which I can get behind. But Aang still argues that as long as these colonies exist, it's a wrong the Fire Nation committed that has to be righted, which I can also see where he's coming from too. It's a well thought out conflict, and even Katara's like, well, I mean, maybe Zuko's onto something here, which is good. I like that Katara has her own thoughts and doesn't just blindly follow Aang. Ashmaker, man, you can't say that anymore. That's fucked up, man. Here we see Sokka let fly one of his classic onomatopoeias, which, I mean, he never actually really did in the show, but he told actor Sokka to do them, so I guess normal Sokka does them now too. Why is everyone tossing this kill the Fire Lord stuff around so casually? I didn't even kill the last Fire Lord, and this one's my friend. What the hell, guys? God, Sokka's so styling. I don't know what these two panels are supposed to imply. Aang's like, talking is always good, right? And then everyone looks dejected. Are they like, man, I remember when we got to kick ass. Now we head back to see what Zuko's been up to in the Fire Nation, and it turns out he hasn't been communicating very well with May. What else is new? But thankfully, May seems really supportive these days, which I like for her. But you kind of get the feeling Zuko's not going to change much just from the illustrations, which is cool. Then the Kyoshi warriors bust in to assassinate Zuko, which you wouldn't expect. Really big twist there. No, actually, it turns out they're going to be the new Kingsguard, which is alright by me. I like that they have something to do. Oh, that's what Azula was going for at the end of the Earth King. These girls don't have noses. She was trying to emulate the famous noseless Kyoshi warriors. Mystery solved. Anyway, that doesn't help at all. Zuko's still freaking the fuck out at night. The Kyoshi warriors are the best guardsmen in the world? Are they? Right, sorry, guardswomen, Ty Lee, my bad. But like, are they renowned for that? I guess they were the security guards at the Full Moon Bay Ferry that one time, but best guardswoman in the world? Really? And finally, in a parallel to the Zuko Iroh prison talks from book 3, we end off part 1 of The Promise with a Zuko Ozai prison talk, or at least the prospect of one coming in the next chapter. Pretty solid way to end it. Okay, so that's The Promise part 1, the continuation to Avatar's main story. Hey, it's a mixed bag for me. I really do like the main conflict and how nuanced it is. There are a lot of different angles that you don't expect going into it. Obviously, you're gonna start reading the book agreeing that the land the colonies are on should be given back to the Earth Kingdom, but by the end of the comic, you might be, and I might even say you probably are, thinking the exact opposite, which is really cool. There's some really clunky character writing that I'm not a huge fan of, mostly with Zuko and especially with Aang, and that's the biggest downside. It just makes it feel like these aren't the same characters that you closed out book 3 with. But this is the very first one, so hopefully they can tighten up the writing in the future and we'll be on our way. If this video does well, you'll be seeing the next part of this comic in not too long, so be sure to leave a like and comment if you enjoyed. Thanks guys, patrons time. Patron shoutouts if you want to see 2 new videos from me, meaning the next in this series, as well as the 2 videos that copyright won't let through no matter how hard I try. Those videos being Overanalyzing M. Night Shyamalan's The Last Airbender and Overanalyzing Game of Thrones' The Long Night. I know that's 3 videos technically, but those other 2 are so old at this point I'm starting to feel bad about it, so we'll count it as 1, I guess. Anyway, if you want to see those, you can support me on Patreon for just a few bucks. Link, as always, is in the description below the video. Biggest shoutouts of all go to my top patrons, Agent Rhino, who can't do a single push-up because when they try, they only ever manage to push the entire Earth down. Danger Stranger, who I saw tackle a jaguar through the windshield of a Ford Escape. Jack, who, unbeknownst to him, there is an entire Japanese anime about his life going on that's going into its 4th season. Kevin Hall, who arm wrestled a kraken and only lost because he was outnumbered. Omega Fighter, who painted an entire room evenly by just throwing the paint can at the floor really hard. Sean Martin, whose voicemail is actually an ancient Sumerian curse. so you better hope he picks up. Stephanie Riches, who defeated the table tennis god, who is unfortunately named Pingo Pongus, in a game of ping pong. Thomas Lautenbach, who won a game of paintball while the other team was using real bullets. Tiago Nascimento, who found an uncontacted tribe and learned a new TikTok dance from them. Barunda, who won the jousting tournament at their local Renaissance fair without using a horse. And Whitrow, who can transfer their brain freeze to anyone else in a 15-meter radius. And of course, my god overanalyzers, two boots are beat: Andrew Wattrett, Austin Gallup, Be My Valentine, Braden Shanahan, Cade Stinson, Charles Barnett, Dizzy Payne, Dominic Saint, Distant, Glintlock, It's Carton, Jackson, John Ajaka, Justin Fletchall, KT and Den B, Nickel Pickle 582, Nicholas Abbott, Peter Bayron, Philip Conti, Pogger White, Reese, Rocket Mist, Ross Lung Wagner, Ryan Maxwell, Samuel Vanderplatz, Super Snipper, Yozen, and the Bareface persists. Up next, well, if this video does well, like I said, more Avatar comics.